What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of All Sports Talk with Peter Burtnett. Bringing you a special episode today for MLK Day. I hope you've been enjoying some NBA basketball action. It was kind of cool earlier today to watch a little bit of high school action as well on ESPNU, seeing Bronny James, LeBron's son, and Cameron Boozer, Carlos Boozer's son, match up against each other. Great game, buzzer beater by Cameron Boozer. It's kind of crazy. You know, I grew up watching both of their dads play. Obviously, LeBron's still playing, but now seeing both of them in high school and playing and probably having futures in the NBA is kind of crazy. But again, hope you're enjoying the basketball on this very special day where we remember Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and all that he stood for, and for just remembering the incredible man that he was and the life that he led, and also understanding that it was tragically cut short because the issues that he fought so valiantly against still existed, and yes, they do exist to this day. I want to tie who he was, what he stood for, into sports, and kind of the title for this video is athletes who would have or did make Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. proud. I want to start as somebody who's grown up with a love for baseball, and baseball being the sport I played from t-ball all the way through my senior year in high school. Obviously, the first name that comes to everybody's mind is Jackie Robinson. If you haven't seen the movie 42, I strongly encourage you to go see that. It's also kind of a sad reminder. Chadwick Boseman starred as Jackie Robinson in that movie. Obviously, rest in peace to both of those incredible men. Jackie's been gone for a while now, and Chadwick Boseman in Hollywood was such a shining example, and he's somebody as well that I'm sure Martin Luther King Jr. would have been very proud of as well. But getting back to Jackie Robinson, the stuff that he endured, if you want kind of I guess I'll call it PG-13 because they have some language in there, but really a PG version of what he experienced. 42, again, is the movie for that. Horrible racist abuse in a sport like baseball that happened on a daily basis, and as they depict in the movie, which I'm pretty sure is very historically accurate, endured even when he was off the field as well, or like in spring training. I remember there was one where he was in Florida, but at the same time, there is the picture of people like Branch Rickey and others who did reach out, but the strength of his character is worth so much more than we can possibly even imagine, especially me as a white man. Being able to imagine enduring that is something I simply can't do, but he's somebody who I want to recognize. A couple of other guys, I'm a Cleveland Guardians or then Indians fan, and Larry Doby was the first African-American player in the American League, and then Frank Robinson was the first black manager to lead a major league team for the then Cleveland Indians in the 1970s. So again, a couple of guys that were a little bit more contemporaries of MLK that I'm sure the Reverend Doctor would have been very, very proud of. Then shifting gears, this one is a little bit, I'm talking about the Cleveland Summit here, a little bit more of an anti-war thing than an anti-racism thing, but everyone who was involved was black or an African American, and that was the Cleveland Summit, June 4th, 1967, just about, I think, 10 months before MLK was murdered, was killed, and that meeting in Cleveland, Ohio, my hometown, was in support of Muhammad Ali, who had decided not to serve in the Vietnam War. Some of the guys that were there are guys who have stood up then and over the years continually stand up against racial injustice and prejudice and for the common cause of civil rights and unity. And some of those guys, Bill Russell, the legendary Boston Celtic, 11 championships with the Celtics, both as a player and as a coach, and put such a major stamp on basketball, but also on I don't want to call it politics, but I'm not thinking of another word right now, but like the unity and the togetherness and racial justice in the NBA. Another guy who was there at the Cleveland Summit, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He continues to speak, again, for civil rights and against racial prejudice and injustice. NBA's all-time leading scorer for at least the next month until LeBron beats that. But again, another example of somebody who the Reverend Doctor would have been very proud of. And then a couple of other guys who were there, Jim Brown, the Cleveland Browns running back, and Carl Stokes. And so all of those guys were just examples of really what MLK was fighting for, and even going further back, what Jackie Robinson and others were fighting for, that these men wouldn't be viewed because of the color of their character, but in this case, because of the color of their skin, but for the content of their character, as MLK said, and then turning it into kind of a sports view, not by the color of their skin, but by their ability on the field of play. And obviously, in sports, we always focus so much on an athlete's ability, but also for their ability to stand up for what they believe in and to stand up against hate and for peace and love and togetherness. Shifting gears a little bit more recently, Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem in protest of black men and women around the United States being killed by police, and really kind of was kneeling, against just even, just hate on black people in general, whether specifically from the cops or just even, black on black crime. But again, specifically against violence by police on African Americans. And he was joined by Eric Reed and by others in kneeling in kind of a similar situation in the NBA. LeBron James, Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade wearing I Can't Breathe shirts after Trayvon Martin was killed. And for Colin Kaepernick, ultimately, it cost him his career. Not something as serious, obviously, as MLK's life, but still something very important to Kaepernick that he unwillingly had to give up because he decided to stand up, or in this case, kneel for something that he believed in, and obviously received so much hate and criticism for what he did that I have to imagine, and really would be bold enough to say, was very racially based. And I think that's why that message was so just vilely answered with. It was so neglected and turned away by so many in the sports community, was because Colin Kaepernick was mixed race, and there were several others who were African Americans who were kneeling against, and not even against, but kneeling during the playing of the national anthem because of what was happening to people who looked like them. And then finally, a really pretty recent, and it's an issue that continues to persist, but the racial abuse against Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, and Jadon Sancho, 3 English footballers who suffered horrible racist abuse online after they missed penalty kicks during the 2021 Euro Championships final loss to Italy. I can't even, again, begin to imagine what that would have looked like. I mean, I can think of, some of the names they would have been called and the racist taunts that would have been leveled towards them. But at the end of the day, in that situation, and those are still words that are going to stick with those 3 young men for probably the rest of their playing careers and the rest of their lives, really. But I hope that what happened afterwards is what sticks with them even more so. The outpouring of love and support and encouragement for those 3 English footballers, saying that, we're not going to let this racist hate win. We're going to continue to fight it. And that's something, again, that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have been extremely proud of. And so those are some of the athletes, some of the stories of people who MLK would have been extraordinarily proud of. This isn't a direct quote. It's from a Sports Illustrated article, actually from way back in 2010. But even though Martin Luther King Jr. was not an athlete, Dr. King understood with remarkable acuity the political and symbolic power of sports. He understood that the athletic field and athletes could be a powerful megaphone for civil rights and racial justice. That's by Dave Zirin is the author of that little snippet there. And so again, he knew the impact of sports, and while he might not have had any specific, connections or whatever with sports, the message that he spread is something that can continue to be felt and should continue to be applied in sports, and something that the Inside the NBA crew on TNT said in their just pregame leading into today's games on TNT. They said that MLK was not somebody to call people out for what they were doing, or for doing wrong, or for being a racist, but he instead called people up. His message wasn't one of returning hate with hate, but with returning and combating hate with love and with peace and with support, and also applying it. The Reverend is in his title for a reason. He was a man of faith as well. And so a couple of faith-based quotes that I wanted to end this episode with before I give my favorite MLK quote. The first one is, "We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power of love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies." And then this is even more so faith geared. "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase." Obviously, MLK was a man of so much wisdom, and was somebody who, I don't need to say was taken way too early in a horrible way. But the one quote that always stands out to me whenever this day comes around, and even whenever whenever any other stories of racist abuse that athletes are dealing with, is this message from his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And that's still a fight that continues to be ongoing. As I said, racism in sports is something that continues to exist, and that's honestly, disappointing is a simple way to say it, but it's as simple as that, and it's just so kind of just terrible to know that it's something that still exists in sports. And I do hope that one day we won't see it in sports. But my message from this episode is there have been so many athletes over the years who did or who would have made Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King very proud for how they stood up for civil rights, for racial justice, against prejudice and against hate, and spreading a message of love and caring for each other. And so that's all for this special MLK Day episode of All Sports Talk with Peter Burtnett. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment about your thoughts on who MLK was to you, and maybe share some stories of how you've seen athletes, because I certainly didn't cover all of it, how you've seen some athletes deal with racist hates toward them, or how they've kind of fought against that. But that's it for this episode of All Sports Talk. I'm host Peter Burtnett, signing out. Peace.